To speak on the subject, we are honored to have Dr. Casey Chan, or Casey for short, joining us today live from Singapore. So a little introduction about Casey. He is a visiting professor to universities in more than 30 countries. He's an international business management consultant and a master corporate trainer. He is a regular speaker at management, leadership, and entrepreneurship conferences in Asia. His latest research interest is in lean, agile entrepreneurship, reinventing it to innopreneurship to help SMEs and MNEs with turnaround and transforming strategies and applying holistic thinking through project-based accelerated action learning. He has authored 6 contemporary books on management, leadership, and technopreneurship. He has published over 100 articles and conducted more than 50 seminars worldwide. Currently, he is co-authoring with Professor Chen Jin of Tsinghua University, ranked 17 out of 50 world top management thinkers in 2021. And the book is called Wholistic Thinking for Better Management of People, Process, and Planet. A practitioner and a scholar in the field of project management and a very good friend of the PMI Indonesia chapter. Hello, Casey, for short. Good evening to you. Welcome back to PMI Indonesia. How are you?
Fine, thank you. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, PMI, members of PMI, and also other professionals. So I would really like to share something which has been what I've been doing all these years. And if I offended anybody, please, I beg your pardon, because we are living in the real world, and and jobs are shrinking, not because it's no longer there, but because of what is called the value add. Also, this is the Reinventing Project Management series, which again, I have been a challenge to me to do it, to be very careful, because if I offended my customer, most probably I won't get the next project. Okay, so to appreciate any topic, the best way to learn is to know its history. So the history of PMI is not new. It was formed in 1969. So by now it's 53 years old, and therefore it is becoming a very important domain. And we have to change this into something that is not only used by the practitioner, but actually to be supported by the academics. So I will look at the 6 areas. That's based on the 60 minutes of presentation, or rather 45 by now. So the changing role of the CEO. So this is something that I myself, if you ask me why I don't want to be a CEO, I said because the CEO always gets stabbed. So I want to be the COO. So this is a stakeholder value management. I always remain as a COO, Chief Operating Officer, rather than a CEO, because I've seen so many CEO being crucified by the board of directors. So therefore I survive a longer history. Now, the next thing we need to understand is that strategy is good, but execution is very tough, because it depends on many people. The more people it depends on, and the differences in the culture will actually hinders the execution capability because of miscommunication. And also the gap between implementation and operations. The operations people always think that, well, I think I understand, but actually they understood only half of it. And senior management always says that it's confidential. We cannot inform all the detailed information to the operations people. And when you leave it to guesswork, this is where all the gaps actually will result in inefficiencies. And the need to know is the last 3 things which we have to understand, that continuous improvements is another very easy to say words, but how to improve continuously, we need to change the way we think, because if we don't keep on changing the way we think, how to improve? We cannot improve every day, because if you improve every day, then life is going to be very challenging, but you can improve in bite size, very, very small amount. And that's what Agile is now talking about, minimum business increment, etc. But how to close these 3 gaps? This is a very long history. I was looking at who can be my mentor, and eventually I found Antonio, and also not only him, but actually I approached the first person, is called Robin Speculant, because he has written the book called Execution Excellence. But eventually now I piece it together, which is in my slide 36. So if you need to keep one slide, just keep the slide 36, and you will realize why we have to not only think differently, but do differently now. And this is called the paradigm shift. And if we do not accept, then we will be going to miss the boat. So with that, I looked at what has actually developed over the years. In the 1950s, 60s to the 70s, the MBA is very important. Now it's still important, but because most of us, like example myself, I'm an engineer, so my boss sent me to do my MBA because he said, I want you to don't just always talk about quality, because quality is important, but you must also talk about profit. So that was becoming very important. And then the person who really put the nail on the head is Kenny Ome. Of course, he was from McKinsey, one of the principal consultants. And the mind of the strategist is eye-opener again, that we have to think longer term. And in order to achieve that, we also look at people who really says is people, process, and planet. Planet means our Internet of Things. So we need the transformational leadership. And before we transform people, honestly, we have to transform ourselves. Otherwise, how to transform people? And now with the new millennium, this is where things starts to move very fast, because industry 3.0 enter 4.0, and then in transition to 5.0, that is where automation actually start to replace many things with the digital business transformation. So this is where I refer to Antonio, which he has himself mentioned. I think if you follow some of his video tube, he was actually fired when he was in PwC. He was hoping that he will be promoted to the partnership ladder, but he was instead promoted. He was fired because he talked too much about project management. So this is very interesting story he actually shared with the audience, and that actually put him to gather all the facts and write a couple of books. This is one of the most recent one, that why the chief project officer is very important, because he is responsible for strategy implementation. And not only that, he also started the strategy implementation institute. So now the changing role of a CEO. And this is very true. All those of us who attended MBA schools, the business school teaches us how to strategize using all these beautiful models, but they did not teach us how to implement. You go to McKinsey, the same thing. They will tell you, this is your strategy, you implement it with the right people. And if you want the right people, you can, of course, engage other consultants to do it, but they are not responsible for the implementation, because implementation, you really need the organization itself. The consultant, unless resign and join your company, then he will be involved in the implementation. Now, let's look at the evolution. Of course, I only focus on 4.0. What brings us to Industry 4.0? So from the process point of view, now we have to improve continuously, because everyone is challenging. And Citibank says the very simple, the city never sleep. Actually, it should be your competitors never sleep. So therefore, we have to continue to improve ourselves. And this is where reflection is very important. We learn by bit size. Ask what went right and what went wrong. And in the past, the middle, senior, and junior management are good enough to move the company forward. But nowadays, you also need external, which are other stakeholders. Also, again, internal stakeholders you can influence, but external stakeholders much more difficult. And that's the reason why Apple, from 400 contractors, they reduced to 40, because this will be much more easier to deal with. Now come to the Internet of Things. Last time it's faster, better, and cheaper, but now it's not only faster, better, cheaper, you need to be smarter. That's why you use all this artificial intelligence, your business analytics, etc. Before we carry on, actually we will ask what question will help us to understand this topic better. So this is where I will ask you a very simple question, or especially for the Singapore audience, if you get the right answer, then I will give you another book. It cannot be in Bahasa, because Bahasa you cannot read unless you are really educated in Bahasa. So a project will be able to execute successfully. I repeat the question again. A project will be able to execute successfully. A answer is resources will be given to prioritize projects. Resources will be given to prioritize projects. B answer says that CEO is in charge of the project management office for prioritized projects. So CEO is in charge of the PMO for prioritized projects. And C answer is a projectized organization structure, a projectized organization structure. Then D answer is the project manager is the most qualified person in the organization. No? The last answer, D, project manager is the most qualified person in the organization. No? So my email is at the end of the slide. You can send your answer, A, B, C, D, just choose one of them. And if you hit the right answer, therefore, I will present you the ebook called Technopreneurship in Industry 4.0. Technopreneurship in Industry 4.0. Oh, okay, the one I wrote with NTU professor, which is Professor Ho Nai Chun. Okay, so this is what we call project-based accelerated action learning, which means that if I want to learn faster, better, and smarter, I actually use projects, and especially in agile project management, you improve in bite size. Okay, so now we are in the 2020s, and moving forward, this is where people always emphasize on human capital. So human capital means that you must be able to tell your boss, you invest $1 in me, I give you back $50. But if your colleague says that, boss, if you invest $1 in me, same job, I give you back $200, who is going to lose the job? It's me. I will lose my job, because that person can actually create much more value for the same position that we are doing. So that is the opening of the CEO, which needs to also play a dual role as the CPO, because the chief project officer actually brings value, especially if you are doing a turnkey project, because some turnkey projects are worth $500 million, but some turnkey projects, like I work for bosses, you are talking about $2 to $3 billion. So of course he keep his position there, not losses but profit. Okay, so now I continue. So this is where IMD says that CEO must be a visionary. Everybody can accept. And these are the things he is going to perform: sensor of market opportunity, strategies and policy maker. He must also be strategist for acquisitions. He must be a good negotiator. He needs to look at the architect of the organization so that he knows which part to cut, which part he can automate and master of change. because the CEO is actually influencing other people to change. And creator of shareholder value and motivator, all these are nice to have. But which of this role actually add the business value to the organization? I can look down the road as the person of vision and tell them, look here, 10 years from now, this is what they always say, the vision of the company. But how to reach that vision? You need a strategy. I have all this policy, but the answer is nice policy, but actually some of the policies needs to change over time. But do you change it? Financial steward, all these are in simple logic says no projects equals to no investment. No investment means no profit, no jobs. So all these indicators slowly bring us to the point that CEO is good. But you look at the very successful CEOs like Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, he actually focused on key projects that actually bring plenty of revenue for the company. So agent of change, of course, this is definitely, you have to influence people. You cannot do all the job yourself. And the other thing is what you learn from IMD is a very simple definition of a leader. When I attended their course there for this, the job of a CEO or the role of a CEO, they actually say that 3 questions you ask. Number 1, if you are the CEO, do you have followers? If the answer is no, that means you are called a road ranger. If you say, yes, I have followers, the next question you ask is that, do you trust your followers? Because sometimes your followers want a position. So therefore, that's it. And the last question is the most difficult to answer. Are you willing to share your gains? That means your rewards with your followers. So I've actually witnessed where the CEO actually earn less than those people below him. Therefore, these people that works for him is willing to work the extra mile because they know this CEO is not a selfish person, is a mental abundance person. So negotiator depends on your influence, your ability to influence, and this is point back to leadership. So now the rest is quite straightforward. Strategies, I come up with a strategy, implementation of strategy. The CEO says that I delegate this to the project manager. That is the end of the day. The answer is yes. If you are CEO, you implement, people listen to you. So I always say that when the PMO, project management office, they don't report directly to the CEO, it is not going to function very well. It's going to be only half effective and also can be very efficient, but then it's override by the ineffectiveness. So architect of organization, yes, the CEO can make changes, and that's why he should be there in the projectized organization. And of course, you need to do marketing, efficiency expert, etc. And the important thing in today's world is that we are all connected by Zoom. So doing international business is just a click of the finger. Now let's look at the chief project officer. So I also attended the Stanford program. So they talk differently because it was taught by consultants. So he says that, well, the person that's behind the CEO is the chief project officer. So as such, if you look at the left-hand side, they need to justify the project. For the CEO, they need to implement the project. For the CEO, they need to also become the implementer for any acquisitions. And also, when it comes to resources, they need to negotiate on behalf of the CEO. Because CEO has many other meetings to attend. And also, the chief project officer is the implementer of the organization structure and system. So you can see the keyword is always the implementer, the one who's going to do all the job. Agent of change, implementer, the chief shareholder value, motivator of project team. Now, if you ask yourself at the end of the day, who will get to keep his job? And this is what happened to a real life situation for myself. I have last time they can call him chief operating officer. Now you can call this person the chief project officer. He went to see the chairman of the company. This is not a small company, a very big company. And he told the chairman, I want the job of the CEO. So the chairman asked, what makes you so sure? So he actually put up a template and said, these are all the turnkey projects I've carried out, and these are all the business I brought in, 3 to 4 times more than the CEO. So do you think you should keep the CEO or you should keep me? So the chairman said, I call a board meeting, we keep you, the CEO has to go. So this is where people start to think that the chief project officer actually is the one that aligns the strategic objectives to the business and operations objectives. This is what PMI PMBOK 6th edition started to talk about. Now the 7th edition, they make it even more emphasis on the importance to link all the 3 levels together. But who can link this? It is actually the number one, because he knows what he wants. From the CEO point of view, all the way to the operations, but he don't need to do everything. He only focus on those things that he have to do. So let's look at the next slide. So this is, I used since I attended the course, I said, okay, these are the 6 companies I've joined. And let's look at why I'm successful and why I'm not successful. The first job I joined was a British company. So you can see all the one I take, I was doing it. So I'm in operations. And after 1.5 years, I was promoted from a project manager to become a general manager of a British company. Because British company are very clear. When you are promoted, you are actually not being discounted. You actually enjoy the same benefits as those general managers from the UK. Then a Japanese company come along and approached me. He said, okay, Casey, you are a good general manager only in Singapore. I give you to be in charge of ASEAN, 10 countries. What do you think? I said, I try because I like to go overseas. Because every time you travel, you like holiday, you know. They say, okay, you try and then see whether you like the job. I stayed 10 years in this company. I stayed 10 years. Then the next one, of course, I become the senior VP of a Canadian company. And now I enter the strategic level because every year they call you back for strategic meeting. So you, I'm not yet at the board level, but I sit after the board level decide. That means the C-suite people, they bring you in already. Okay, these are the things we're going to do. And the next job, D job, is I was the chief operating officer of Naga, which is the casino. So I was saying that I didn't know it was a casino, but actually it was a 6 mega projects. And again, you can see all the things I've done. So to finish it, Cinemas Group after that, which is E. F, again, I went back to the consulting, the big consulting company, and then G, before I I start my own consulting firm. So you can see that in actual fact, you have to connect all the 3 together if your company is going to be successful. No? I think the one I'm very proud of is the Cinemas Group, because in 1998 until 2006, they turned around from entering a crisis which owned the creditors $14 billion they are able to return. And all these are based on projects, because they can show to the creditors that I'm going to return you the money, and these are the enormous projects we have. Oh, okay. So now move into, therefore we need to change. Not change the way we think, change our role. So this is another study conducted rigorously over, I think, 12 years at Harvard. It says, okay, as a person, you can only change 10%. Even you are the top project manager, 10%. But if you want to climb higher, where you become a competent manager means you are already VP level, cross-functional, you have to play a different role up to 20%. Now, a proficient leader, that means you are the head of the SBU. In Singapore, maybe you call managing director, but then of course, in some large corporation, it's called senior VP. So you cross border, you're in charge of maybe the region. You have to again play a different role, which is up to 30%. But if you want to really bring the company like an entrepreneur, which are typical of Bill Gates, Michael Dell, the late Steve Jobs, because they are former owners of the company. You have to actually play up to 60% different things you do. And these are very high value added. Okay. So with that in mind, this is actually the research done by Antonio. I think you know Antonio was doing his PhD as well. So he actually researched and realized that those companies that are not so good, that run slower than those who run very fast, they are project driven, and the CEO spend a lot of his time to change the business. When you change the business, it's a project, because they have different projects in different countries. So the normal running, you leave it to the chief operating officer, but then you also want to train the chief operating officer eventually to take over your role. So that's the reason why in Apple, the days of Steve Jobs, he spent 60% of his time to run the projectized organization and 40% of his time to run the former matrix organization structure. Whereas Tim Cook is reversed. Tim Cook spends 60% of his time as the CEO to run the former organization structure and then get involved 40% of his time to run projects when Steve Jobs is not there. But when Tim Cook took over from the late Steve Jobs, it was very, very smooth, not so difficult. So therefore, now I identified 3 gaps. The first gap is between the strategy and execution. So how can we minimize the gap? This is this is from Stanford. This is a very simple diagram, and yet it tells us a very important story. So when you strategize, you come up with a strategy, and normally those people who are CEOs who run projects before, they will convert the strategy into prioritized projects. That means the investment, they will bring it into different type of projects. So convert strategy into projects. That's the first step. And the CEO will focus on those prioritized projects because he cannot handle all the projects. Now, that is the first gap if you don't do it. So he needs to change the organization structure in order to accommodate his time, and also in order to run certain projects. So now between implement and operate, we also know that this is called the project management capability maturity model. It's just like our age. At 20 years old, we can run very fast. 30 years old, if you don't have tummy, still can run very fast. 40 years old, your tummy start coming out. You don't run so fast. 50 years old, you better don't run too fast, otherwise you break your bones, like my friend. So that is the reason why you have to start searching for succession planning. Tell me which organization has that. There are few, but then project management capability means that you must be very realistic and says that up to which point in time this project manager or this very senior project manager, either you elevate, promote this person to become the coach and the mentor, and then you have new blood to take over. So this is the project management practice that now project PMI is really talking about it, and produce, of course, many PMPs, PGMPs, PFMPs, and now DASM, DASSM, etc. But now between execution, back to the strategy, this is where the continuous improvement that takes place. A lot of people say that we are a learning organization. Yes, it's true, but not everyone are encouraged to learn. So therefore, now if you look at the equation, productivity equals to output divided by input, which is your organizational performance divided by your resource investment. So if your execution capability is not always improving, one day somebody will supersede you and buy over your company, because your ROI, your internal return, you cannot show to the board of directors and to the investors. Okay, so with that in mind, let's look at, in actual fact, why you need to look at the inverted pyramid. That means, in other words, when you are a very capable individual, is left-hand side is called competence, but one person is not good enough. You need to have a team. So that's called capacity. 1 + 1 become 5. 1 + 1 become 6. Now, your collection of all the projects become the organization capability. So this is what a large organization or even small ones are doing now. If you look at the right-hand side, lightweight projects, because the company has very good reputation in managing projects, they outsource. I'm IBM. Here come a customer, and this customer is my very good customer. They also have big projects and small projects, but they insist that IBM should be the one responsible. Okay, I take the small projects, but I outsource to my contractors because I know they're very good. No, medium-weight projects, cross-country projects, my people can handle, but not 100%. Maybe they will handle 60%, the other 40%. Also, I outsource. CEO stays at the heavyweight projects, as I mentioned before. When I ask some of my customer, what CEO level, what projects you run, they say 500 million minimum to about 2 to 3 billion. So therefore, you can see that the CEO is already doing a dual role, CEO and CPO. Not crude palm oil in Indonesia is Chief Project Officer, because Indonesia is now the largest palm oil industry in the world. And the answer is very simple, because you have so many projects that's happening that you overtook, I should say, the Malaysia. Okay. Now, this is to remind ourselves you cannot be number one in a short period of time. That means a lot of organizations, the bosses are very impatient. They say, I want my company to be a high-performance culture. High-performance culture takes time to develop. But the first thing is, did you invest in your people? Are your people actually being coached and mentored? Are your people actually understand all these gaps that you are facing? But sometimes when the company is small, those gaps are not so big. But when companies grow bigger and bigger, the gaps become bigger and bigger. And that's the reason why you can see large organizations, they reach a certain limit, they plateau, and then they come down. No? So now let's identify another gap, which is between the implementation and operations. So this is the last part. That's the Stanford model at the top, but the bottom is actually the band scorecard, which I added on because it's Harvard to Kaplan and Norton who invented the band scorecard. So it's no point to just understand a business strategy and now you have a proper organization structure, which is called the projectile structure to support. Then the investment is converted into projects, and then you also have the execution capability depending whether you are in stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, or 5, and that becomes your high performance culture when you are in stage 5, and that is where you can grow your business, so business results. But the band scorecard has to measure people, process, and planet. This is what my latest book is talk about. People, process, and planet with regards to the strategy. Now, so to put everything together, why the CEO must also be a CPO is because when you strategize, you have to convert your strategy into project. Let's say the CEO has no knowledge, zero knowledge about how to run projects. So that is not a very good sign. So at least he can attend short courses, he can beef it up, and then he can say, okay, now I can understand how to run projects with the best practice. So when you implement, again, the CEO has to understand there are many types of method. You have the predictive, you have the hybrid, you have the agile in your project management. So if he can understand why those very successful companies, they are moving towards agile, then he can say, okay, let's try. I allow you to make mistakes, and it's okay because we are just new in the game. We are new into agile management, but eventually you must see the results. So operate, you must see the results. And the enterprise balance scorecard actually measures how successful your strategy is being implemented via projects. So when this is understood by CEOs of, I should call this super efficient company or high performance organization, they really endorse, they really adopt, and they will adapt their former organization structure to the new structure. So this brings us to our conclusion that I just look at the bottom, the concept of Antonio, which says that you need to consider, this is not new again, this was actually brought up by Norton and Kaplan, but at the time he called this Office of Strategy Management, so it's called Office of Strategy Management. But in actual fact, now you must talk about innovation management. Also, the strategy is good, but how can you have continuous improvement? So this is a big twist in the type of projects. It must be innovative projects. And the culture is, that is why, I mean, I'm not young, I'm 67 years old. I have so many organizations, because I'm a consultant as well, they talk about agile. I have no choice. I have to sit for the DASSM exam, the ACP exam. I mean, luckily it was a COVID, so I have a lot of time to study. I cannot go to Indonesia anymore for almost 3 years by now. So I, not for the sake of the qualification, then I understand the agile mindset is very, very important. And this is how you have to convince organizations that want to really move fast. So this will enhance the execution capability in a shorter period of time. And this is just a suggestion how the Office of Strategy Innovation Management will look like. So you have the CEO spend 30% of his time running the formal organization structure, that means the routine work, and 70% of the time to look at key projects. And this is how organizations survive in this during this COVID pandemic. And now the last part is the gap between operations and continuous improvement, which bring us to the reality of strategy must be converted into project structure. You must put the right people into your projectized structure, not any person. Culture is performance, and now you have to measure the productivity, but how to measure? Because the people do not work for the company anymore. They work as a partner. So therefore, it's talking about partnership, like a consulting company. Because you have to create value, you have to motivate yourself and get the things done. So this leads us to the new PMI talent triangle, which of course all of you are very familiar, from strategic to business management to technical project management. So again, Peter Drucker, the late Peter Drucker, says management alone is not enough. So we have to unify the three things together: management, leadership, and entrepreneurship. But now we are moving into technopreneurship. That means we use technology by the entrepreneurs. That is where you have your unicorn, your Gojek, your your unicorn companies. So in order you can sustain, you need to build this pipeline. So this pipeline of competent managers, this is for individual, but those people who has the stamina who has the inspiration to contribute more, you can further develop them into proficient leaders so they can manage the agile team or empower team. And now the organization needs to have more and more agile entrepreneurs, or including startups. So I give you a simple story. If you have a large organization like 3M, somebody come to the CEO and say, I have a very good idea. This is a product that we should consider. If the CEO kills the product, what happens? Then this person, he starts his own. That is not very offensive, but if he joins the competitors, and then now he really develop the product and compete with your product, which eventually is out of technology. So that will be a very big hurdle. And that is the reason why now people understand that let your own employees start their own business, but as long as it's not really start and then become your competitors, so why not? So these are known as the agile entrepreneurs. So in order to fill all this gap, let's look at what I mentioned today. Closing the 3 gaps is the CEO double up as a CPO, and this is will be further reinforced by the top 10 most admired companies in the world. And in actual fact, there's a top professor in Harvard Business School who says that make projects the school for leaders, which is Kim Clark. Then you have gap 1, gap 2, gap 3, and how to put all the 3 gaps together. Let's look at what all these top 10 most admired companies say. So starting from Tim Cook all the way to Jamie Dimon, they all say that, well, their strategy is actually ordinary, but they own their success to superior execution of projects. If one person says so, yes, this is by chance, but if 10 of them say so, that means there is a certain consensus. Now, what do they measure? So they actually measure leadership, which is that's not we mentioned, you can use projects. Next one, you can measure innovation. So this is where I earlier spoke about project-based accelerated action learning, because this is to see how can you continue to improve your innovation power. Incentives must be there. Remember I mentioned IMD says that you are the CEO, are you willing to share your benefits with other people? Succession planning must have. Otherwise, your company cannot grow. And the last one is, of course, the execution capability. We have to understand we cannot reach maturity overnight. It takes years. In GE, it took Jack Welch 20 years. In IBM, more than 10 years. So it doesn't mean how big or how small is the company. It's the culture of the organization, how much you need to change. Now, these are the attributes that is mentioned by the top 10 most admired companies. So you are able to attract people, quality of management, innovativeness. I focus on the green ones, which are of immense value to project management, long-term investment value in project management, and effectiveness in doing business globally. So we are coming to the end of the session. That is a paradigm shift. There's a current call that this cannot happen the same again. Old wine in new bottles cannot sell. So therefore, if you want to change, this is where leadership comes in. You have to measure yourself. What is my leadership? Am I a person that's willing to change? Or am I a very stubborn person? This one, you can do psycho test. Because leadership is a process. So if you know that I'm a very stubborn person, now you have to change. That is where you go into action learning. Now you must think like an entrepreneur. So this is a process. An entrepreneur is a creative person. It's a person that never says that it is not possible. It's a person who always look at new opportunities. Work. Now that is your project work. You can see the project management there. So project work, because non-project work means this is the routine work which will be replaced by the robotics and the automation. Behave is about your transformation from non-digital to digital, which is digital business transformation. Then with all these 5 things in the change effect, CHAIN, chain, like a supply chain, then it will work. And that is the paradigm shift into the future. So as a conclusion, this is where I realized that over years, these are the different institutions that provide their best endeavor to help to bridge the gap. The first one was the one which Antonio and Robin Seculan came up with, the strategy implementation professional. So again, I have to study, I think 6 or 7 modules. And also I wrote a report, evaluated. I'm the first fellow of SII because I'm getting old. I don't have enough stamina to study. So I told Antonio, I submit the report and assess whether it's good enough for you. And the next one, of course, your implement is you need to have a common language for work, which is your PMP, your ACP, your DASSM, and DSSM. Now, the last one is that because I have been internal consultant in the cinemas where I'm in charge of 80 consultants, I realized that it is very important. So in Singapore, we have the RMC, the Registered Management Consultant. This is specific to the needs of the local industry. However, when I look at the people that can go overseas, because cinemas is a very big group, they have projects in China, projects in Africa all the way, projects in USA, India, etc. You must be a certified business consultant. So this is called the CMC, which is also available. If you look at the information, where there's a body called the International Certified Management Consultants International Institute of Certified Management Consultants International, which is under the ISO, just like the PMP 17024. And this is now becoming more and more important because projects are cross-country. Yeah.
I will stop taking picture.
I saw my best friend, my brother, Dr. Ricky.
Oh, okay. So, do you actually can speak Indonesian a little, Casey?
Yeah. Abang kabar.
Apa kabar? Okay.
Yes, people spoiled me. They don't speak Bahasa to me, they speak English.
Even when you're working in Indonesia?
Yes, Dr. Ricky, he speaks English, he doesn't speak Bahasa, and then he make all the students speak English. Speak Bahasa is a minus point. That's why they pamper me so much, I cannot speak Bahasa. But in the restaurant, I know the order.
Ricky here is Ricky Ekacayadi, you mean?
No.
Ricky Saujana, the one.
I'm Ricky Wang. Yes.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I already finished capturing the picture. Thank you so much, Casey. Thank you so much, everyone.
To everyone. Yeah, if there's
See
anything,
you.
Thank you so much.
Send me an email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Casey. Thank you so much, everyone. There is a comment, Casey, from Vida that nasi padang is the best. Casey already leave. Thank you, everyone. I will close.